Hello, it is I, Dito Supreme. I really didn't have a transition between that and what I had written down, so... Pokemon Colosseum is different, which is something Pokemon as a series really hasn't been in quite a long time. Instead of a little boy collecting badges and exploring environments, you're a big man who rides motorcycles and steals evil Pokemon from evil ninjas. I replayed this game for the first time since I was a little boy to see if it's worth going back to see if it's worth revisiting, to see how well it's held up. So, let's get started. When you start a new game, you're greeted by a cutscene of the protagonist destroying a building and running off with what looks like an NBA-grade shooting sleeve. Afterwards, you roll up to a restaurant that looks like it could give you tetanus if you sat on it wrong. After talking to some locals and beating the bejesus out of this man's zigzagoon, you notice a moving bag in the back of a truck. You go to the next town over and discover these two goons engaging in some light human trafficking. That's right, this game has adult themes. Some of these themes include drinking, divorce, kidnapping, human-on-human violence, blackmail, Pokemon-on-human violence, and just overall dirtiness. Anyway, after we free our new companion and name her Slutbag, we track down the mayor of Phoenix City. When we approach the mayor's house, the windiest man in a purple skirt comes out and acts threatening for no reason at all. Anyway, we talk to the mayor about the abduction and the disgusting black Pokemon. He recommends fighting in the town's Colosseum. You're right to think this is absolutely not helpful. So we follow the mayor's advice and we go toward the town's stadium, Colosseum. And unfortunately, they just started a tournament. Bummer. We walk outside and we're bombarded by bald men who look like the half-robot people from Cloud City on Star Wars Episode 5. You know those guys? They tell my new squeeze how bad of a man I am. They tell her all about the snag machine that I stole in that awesome intro movie. Well, Slutbag gets it in her head that I can use the machine to steal shadow Pokemon. What a concept! Unfortunately, she's only okay with you stealing shadow Pokemon, even though we'd have a much easier time if I could just rob all evil trainers of their Pokemon, rendering them powerless. Ass-backward logic aside, we go back to the mayor's house and discover human traffickers from before, Power Rangers, and one of the first black characters in Pokemon. He's also a dancing crime boss with a giant Pokeball afro, my absolute favorite character from this side series. After you catch everyone's least favorite fighting type, the colored fellas block off the 3 exits. Now, believe it or not, these ninja doofuses have catchable Johto starters. Which exit you go through determines what starter you can catch. The game does nothing to tell you this. The first time I played this, I went with Bayleaf and struggled because of it. After you leave the town, you have the option to go to Pirate Town. Pirate Town is a shithole. But I will say the music in this game really starts to shine here. The music so far has been okay, but the music really starts to shine in Pirate Town. It is a legitimate bop. Another thing about Pirate Town is all the trainers in the town square are kind of dressed like assholes. Now, normally I'd be okay with this, but because they're trainers, it's hard to determine what kind of Pokemon they'll be using. For example, in the main series, if you saw a bird keeper, you would be right in assuming he was packing some flying types. If you saw a hiker, you would be right to assume they would have some rock types and occasionally a fighting type. Bug catchers would have bug type, etc. You could lead with a type advantage in the early game fights to expedite training. This game does not give you that luxury. Notice I said training and not leveling up. We'll get to that. After I showed these punks how I run these streets, I see a man die in said streets. I investigate and discover Pepe Salvia is made off with the gear that powers the town Colosseum. I guess he did it because Afro Man was giving shadow Pokemon to Colosseum winners. Also, Afro-Man kidnapped this guy's Plusle. I guess that's important. Anyway, you backtrack to this construction site to get the gear. The guys here only talk about the epic tower they're building, and I guess that's kind of foreshadowing. We go back, fit the gear, whoop ass at the Colosseum, sneak into Afro-Man's compound, slowly go up the stairs, sneak into a cave that's on top of his building. I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to go downstairs into a cave? But whatever. Eventually, I kick Afro-Man's ass, save Plusle, and wrap up Pirate Town. Slutbag is so impressed with me, she takes me to see her grandparents in Egg Gate Village. Egg Gate is absolutely littered with hidden routes and items. It's a nice change of pace from the shithole that is Pirate Town, but it's still pretty generic overall. Not long after we get to Egg Gate, Cypher Ninjas, that's right, the bad guys are called Cypher, they come and they decide to destroy the Celebi Shrine. This shrine can purify shadow Pokemon after you've managed to whittle down the purple bar that's where the XP bar is normally. The further down you whittle the purple bar, the more moves the shadow Pokemon can remember. Now I know I really haven't talked about shadow Pokemon a lot, so I guess now is the best place to do it. Shadow Pokemon are Pokemon that have had the door to their heart closed by Cypher, the evil team of this region. After you snag a shadow Pokemon from a trainer, the more you use it in battle and the more you carry it with you, the more the door to their heart will open. And like I said earlier, the only kinds of Pokemon you can steal from other trainers are shadow Pokemon. Well, not only that, but they're the only kinds of Pokemon you can catch at all in this game. No wild Pokemon or an Ori at all. In fact, I also didn't mention that earlier in the game you have to actually hunt for Pokeballs, since the mart doesn't sell them. You can talk to someone in the mart and they'll tell you that the outskirts stand sells them, but to keep it a secret. But why keep it a secret? Is it illegal to have Pokeballs in this region? Is there a Pokemon black market? I have so many questions. Anyway, back to not Ilex Forest. Slutbag's Gramps and his level 50 Pikachu get their cheeks clapped, and I snag myself a Hitmontop, everyone's favorite fighting type. After we walk Grandpa home, my beeper goes off, telling me that Cypher is raising all kinds of hell at Mount Battle. You go and stomp grunts 1 through 9 and get to admin number 2, or One Punch Sumo, and battle him. I also haven't talked a lot about battling in this game. In fact, I've kind of been saving that topic for this battle in particular. If you haven't noticed by now from the footage, this game is double battles only. Not only double battles, but Gen 3 double battles. This means when you lose a Pokemon, you immediately have to replace it mid-turn. So if a trainer places both parts of their turn on one of your Pokemon, and your Pokemon faints after just the first part of their turn, the Pokemon you replace it with takes the second part of that same turn. I compare it to coming out of the gulag on Warzone just to die again in the very same firefight. It's a pain. You know what else is a pain? Since every fight is a mandatory double battle, you no longer have the option to switch your Pokemon after you knock out an opponent's Pokemon. It's set mode only. Also, the AI is absolutely brutal in places. These bosses, these admins, they use legitimate strats against you, and I was not prepared. The admin of Mountain Battle uses an Earthquake Protect strategy, and the pre-gym leader from earlier spams Double Team. And hell, a later fight uses a Pelipper with Rain Dance and a Manectric with Lightning Rod. Keep in mind, you're also trying to catch Pokemon while you're battling like this. Speaking of which, the admin at Mountain Battle has a freaking Entei on his team. Now, it is catchable, but keep in mind, he's throwing out earthquakes left and right, and it is absolutely possible he can knock out his own legendary Pokemon. Now, I know I talked about Shadow Rush before, like whenever you catch the Pokemon, that's the only move it knows, but they also know it whenever you're in battle trying to catch it, and it does recoil damage. The likelihood of a Pokemon knocking itself out and you missing your chance to catch it is high. Now usually I just start throwing Pokeballs as soon as it shows up, and I hope for the best. Speaking of chucking Pokeballs, there's actually a really helpful glitch in this game where if you throw a Pokeball on the first part of your turn, and then move that same Pokeball up 1 or down 1 on the next part of your turn, you can throw the ball and the same ball will stay in your bag, and it's a very handy trick for saving money. Anyway, after we steal Fire Dog, we get a page, God, what year is it? From someone telling us they've made an arrest at Pirate Town. We steal a key, take the elevator down to Pokémon's Tier 3 dungeon. This place is filled to the brim with simps. Now, the more I think about the Under, it really is a dank, dirty place, about 1,000 times more than Pirate Town, and I think these people are prisoners. Like, the only exit is the elevator that's in that dank building in Pirate Town. Doesn't really make sense. Anyway, my favorite part of this area is the UFO in the middle of town. After you run around the town for a little bit, you can float on it and interrupt Pokemon's stream even more so than an open Pornhub window. Another thing I should mention is on my second attempt at this fight, shuffled her team lineup. I mean, it's just another thing that makes the game more difficult, really. After you chase this bitch down around the basement, she'll drop a train key. You can go to the lab basement, and the ninjas decide to set off a bomb in the basement of the lab. I think it's a little overkill. Regardless, I find a key to the lab gate. And the more I think about it, it just makes me think, why couldn't Boss Lady just drop a key to the lab? It seems like a little bit of padding, but whatever. Oh, also, the lab is the absolute worst part of the game. Number one, there's no healing machine, but there is a PC for saving. That's right, you can't just save anywhere in the overworld. You have to save at designated PCs. So because there's a PC and no healing machine, I don't burn through potions or run my ass to the nearest Pokemon Center. What I do is, I go all the way up to the PC, drop one Pokemon in, take it out, drop the next Pokemon in, take it out, until all of them are healed. And that is, it's a big pain that really didn't need to be there. You can just have a healing machine right next to it. It would just make things easier. Number two, about halfway through the lab, this dickweed scientist pulls an alarm and then says, hee, now you can't leave, or something like that. But I absolutely can leave. And the alarm, oh god, it's so loud. Instead of music, it's just the alarm, and it is absolutely awful. In fact, I muted the game for the rest of the session. What a pointless thing to program in. After we get through the lab, we meet Ein. Anyway, he talks about the ultimate shadow Pokemon, even though they've already got like the legendary beasts running around. After you catch his Raikou, you give this kid a data disk back on the Under, and come back up to find this guy talking about the brand spanking new shiny ass tower in the middle of the region. You get to the tower, and holy shit, that's a tower, alright. You start to explore, and you find all of the Cypher admins you fought before just kind of hanging out. Now, when I first saw these guys just hanging out, I thought they'd be like the Elite Four equivalent or something in this game, but that is not the case. Honestly, it really would have made more sense for them to be the Elite Four equivalent, but anyway, their teams are refreshed, and it's kind of like a second chance to catch the legendary beasts if you haven't already. But after we rebattle them, we go back all the way to a gate for the Master Ball, which absolutely helps a lot with the Pokeball glitch, like I said earlier. Then you turn back around to proceed up the tower. You fight the Team Snag a boss out of absolutely nowhere. Like, why even include these guys at all? Afterwards, you go to the not Elite Four fight and then fight Nascour. Now, this took me a while because, unlike the Elite Four, there's no saving between fights. So if you lose to Nascour, your ass has to start from the very first trainer, this fucking Colosseum Dome shit. Which is absolutely what happened to me after his fucking Destiny Bond using Gardevoir got me. Anyway, after you beat the man in the purple dress, the little round mare from like the first few hours of the game does a big flip and shows how evil he is. The level gap for this fight is actually very high. Now, before grinding in Mount Battle, there was a 15 level gap, and that's kind of my problem with this game. Now, usually in Pokemon games, they do a good job of giving you a lot of experience so you won't need to grind to stay near your opponent's level. In this game, the level gap goes from about 5 levels above to 15 levels above in the span of a half an hour. It's a little much. Anyway, the game ends with Ho-Oh blasting the bad guys out of the sky. Epic. Now, I know there's a post-game, but honestly, I am completely uninterested. On paper, this game should really appeal to me. It's a darker Pokemon story that's more difficult than your standard mainline game, but all that is surface level. The narrative is just as plain as ever, maybe even plainer since there's no rival or league. It's just slutbag telling you where you should go next. The difficulty mainly comes from a lack of choice and team diversity, and the level gap, and the only time difficulty is legitimate is during a boss fight, and there's only 10 or so of those during the whole 15 to 20 hour story mode. The absolute only way I recommend this game is if you're doing a Gen 3 catch-em-all, a la J-Rose 11, and you need the Johto starters, and Ho-Oh if you really want to go the extra mile. If you're looking for a good Pokemon experience on the GameCube, I recommend XD Gale of Darkness instead.